Ever since starting tasting history, there is one dish I have really wanted to make, and it has eluded me. Until now. The much maligned, often mythologized haggis, the national dish of Scotland. So thank you to Wondrium for sponsoring this video as I travel to Scotland to make medieval haggis, this time on Tasting History. So I've wanted to do an episode on haggis for so long because it's iconic. It's haggis. But I have put it off, not because I am afraid of what it is, essentially a boiled sausage of oatmeal and sheep organs, but because one of the ingredients, one of those organs, sheep lung, is actually illegal here in the United States. So I figured, what better excuse is there for traveling all the way to Scotland with the sole purpose of making a 15th century haggis? The recipe comes from the Liber Curae Cocorum, or the Book of Cookery, written around 1430. For haggis, the heart of sheep, the ne'er thou take, the bowel not thou shalt forsake. On the turbulin made and boiled well, hack all together with good purcell. Hyssop savory thou shalt take then, and suet of sheep take in I can. With powder of pepper and eggs good one, and seethe it well and serve it then. Look it be salted for good men. In winter time, when herbs been good, take powder of home, I wot indeed. As savory mint and thyme full good, hyssop and sage I wot by the road. So it's actually very similar to the modern version, which is a bunch of sheep organs boiled in its own bowel. One big difference, though, is a modern haggis usually has a lot of spices to add flavor, whereas the only spice in this recipe is pepper, and it really relies on herbs to do most of the flavoring. As the poetic recipe says, as savory mint and thyme full good, hyssop and sage I wot by the rood. By the rood meaning by the cross, and it was used often at the time as an oath of truth. I don't quite know who's going to question the veracity of a haggis recipe, but somebody's going to, or else he wouldn't have put it, or he just needed it to rhyme. But oaths were taken very, very seriously in medieval Europe. I mean, it was the breaking of an oath that ostensibly led to the invasion of England by the Normans. And that's the topic of an excellent series from today's sponsor, Wondrium. Watching a series on Wondrium is like taking a college course from your favorite professor. So when I saw that Wondrium had a course on the Normans, I had to watch. Now, the Normans were essentially Norse Vikings just a couple generations removed. Norman, Norseman, same thing. And the most famous Norman was undoubtedly William the Conqueror, who, after extracting an oath, likely through intimidation from Harold Godwinson, used the breaking of that oath as a pretext for invading England in 1066 and earning his title of the Conqueror. And this series also covers one of the lesser-known invasions by the Normans, the invasion of Sicily. And while history is where I definitely spend most of my watch time, Wondrium offers courses on science, travel, business. They even have courses that teach you skills like guitar, knitting, and even baking breads for the upcoming holiday season. And speaking of the holidays, Wondrium makes an excellent gift for those in your life who love learning. And with Wondrium series available on your TV, phone, laptop, or even downloaded to listen to as a podcast, you can really take advantage of the free trial that Wondrium is offering. Just visit wondrium.com/tastinghistory or click the link in the description to start your free trial of Wondrium today. And now, back to the haggis. So I was so excited to make this haggis. I was going to go to Scotland, get all of the ingredients, and then make the haggis in the kitchen of some unassuming bed and breakfast. But it turns out haggis is not easy to make. So I am grateful that Ewan Patterson of Allen's Butcher in Auchterarder, Scotland, was willing to assist me on my quest for medieval haggis. Though really, I'm the one doing all of the assisting. So he started off with the lamb offal, specifically the heart, liver, and lungs. Then he cut those up and put them into a pot to boil overnight. The next morning, Ewan put the boiled meat and some stock into a bowl, then he added a bit more lamb fat to help with flavor and to help bind the meat together as it goes through the mincer. And then he minced the meat. And as they always say, you don't want to know how the sausage is made. Well, it turns out the same goes for haggis. Luckily, once it is all minced and put into a bowl, it doesn't look that bad. Then he added in just a bit of oatmeal to help make the meat bind together, and then it was time to add the herbs. And my plan had been to use all fresh herbs, and many of the herbs were very easy to find fresh. Mint, parsley, but hyssop and savory, not so easy to find fresh. But I actually found someone, Bridget Webster, in England who grew both of these herbs in her Tudor-style garden. And she shipped some to me up in Scotland. Unfortunately, the royal post really let us down, and so they didn't get there until after I had already left. So I had dried herbs on standby, and we ended up using some of those. But even the original 1430 recipe says you can use dried herbs during winter, so let's just say it was winter. So he added the herbs, cracked a few eggs into it, and I tossed in the pepper. I'm helping! And it was pretty much the only helping that I did from then on, because the next step was the filling of the haggis, and it really takes expertise, and that's something I don't have. But luckily Ewan did, and he made quick work of stuffing a number of haggises. And he used intestine, which is what the recipe says and is what is very often used today. It makes haggises about, from here to here. But you can use the stomach if you want to make literally like a haggis that big. We didn't do that because, one, that's not what the recipe said, and two, it's just too much haggis. Then Ewan tied off the haggises and dropped them in a pot of boiling water for about 45 minutes. And this is the part where you will know if you stuffed your haggis and tied it off correctly, because if you didn't, it can split and open up, and then you really just get haggis soup, or as some stories go, they will explode and you'll get haggis in the eye. As far back as ancient Greece, in the Aristophanes play The Clouds, Strepsiades entertained Socrates with a tale, "So I was served with a stuffed sheep's paunch I broiled. Because I never thought to give the rascal vent, bounce goes the bag and covers me all over with filth and offal till my eyes struck fire." But Ewan was a professional, and he assured me that he would not let hot sheep innards explode into my eyes. And thankfully he did not, otherwise I wouldn't be here to tell you the history of haggis. It's the age-old question, the question that keeps me, and I'm sure you, up at night. Who brought the haggis to Scotland? Theories abound, but nobody really knows. What we do know is that according to Strepsiades' mishap with the unvented sheep stomach, the ancient Greeks would often take the offal of an animal and boil it right after the kill because it doesn't have a very long shelf life. And by ancient Rome, they were taking these meats and stuffing them into sausage casings, even in one Apicius recipe, stuffing it into the womb of a sow. And so when the Romans invaded Britain, they may have brought the practice with them. Though the Norse people of the Viking Age were doing pretty much the same thing, so maybe it didn't show up until they came in the 8th and 9th centuries. But it could have also been that the hunters of Celtic Britain, long before the Romans or the Vikings arrived, realized that the stomach of an animal made a pretty good boiling bag for all those bits and bobs that would fall out of an animal after you killed and gutted it, and that tended to spoil very quickly. So it could have been any of them, or it could have been none of them. We don't really know. We don't even really know where the name comes from. It possibly comes from the Old Norse hagv, or French haché, both having very similar sounding words that mean to chop, and it is where we get the word to hack. So maybe we just follow Samuel Johnson's dictionary that says haggis from hog or hack. What is known is that by the medieval era, haggis, using many different spellings, was being enjoyed all over Britain, including in Lancashire, which is actually where our recipe today was written, not in Scotland, but in England. Now these early haggises, they aren't exactly what we would consider a haggis today. A dictionary from 1440 simply says it is a pudding. That is a sausage, not the pudding like we in the United States have that it comes in a little cup that you have at lunch, but a sausage. And it wasn't even always sheep early on. As the 1615 recipe from presumptuously titled The English Huswife, containing the inward and outward virtues which ought to be in a complete woman, says, oatmeal mixed with blood and the liver of either sheep, calf, or swine maketh the pudding which is called the haggis or haggis. And other early recipes even call for boar or deer. Now, when the haggis became popular in Scotland, we don't really know, but it was definitely a staple by 1520 because it enjoys a passing reference in the Fighting of Dunbar and Kennedy. This was basically a 16th century Scottish rap battle with a lot of profanity. I'll actually put a link in the description to where you can read the whole thing for yourself. It's definitely worth it, but luckily the part that has the haggis mention is in one of the tamer insults hurled by Dunbar to Kennedy. The gallows gape at your ugly snout, as you would for a haggis like a ravenous bird. Now while that may be the first mention of haggis in Scotland, in England it actually all but faded from memory. By the 18th century it was thought of as merely a product only of the Scots, and in Tobias Smollett's 1771 novel The Expedition of Humphrey Clinker, an Englishman who had grown quite fond of Scotland and its cuisine, which he says was savoury and even delicate, had to admit, I am not yet Scotchman enough to relish their haggis. A mess of minced lights, livers, suet, oatmeal, onions, and pepper enclosed in a sheep's stomach had a very sudden effect upon mine, and the delicate Mrs. Tabby changed colour. The Scots, in general, are attached to this composition with a sort of national fondness. And it's absolutely true. For heaven's sake, in 1786, Scotland's national poet, Robert Burns, wrote an entire ode called Address to a Haggis. And I don't think I can do proper justice to Burns's Scots writing, and so I have asked my good friend Bruce Fumey, consummate actor and host of Scotland History Tours on YouTube, to read a few stanzas in his charming brogue.
Fair fa your honest sonsy face, great chieftain of the pudding race. Aboon them all ye tak your place, painch, tripe, or thern. Weel are ye worthy o' a grace, as lang's my earn. The groaning trencher there ye fill, your hurdies like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need, and through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. Ye powers wha mak mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare. Old Scotland wants no skinking ware that joups in luggies, but if you wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis.
Today the haggis has become inextricably linked with Robert Burns, and while it is eaten all year round, it is especially popular on Burns Night, January 25th. People all over the world celebrate the life of this literary icon. Now, despite what I've just told you about the haggis, what it is, how it's made, its importance to the Scottish people and their national heritage, all of this history, well, it turns out I may have got it all wrong. At least if the January 2nd, 1925 edition of the Montrose Standard has anything to say about it. And who am I to besmirch the integrity of such an illustrious newspaper as the Montrose Standard, I ask you? Some have suggested that the haggis is a pudding. Ye gods! The noble, untamable haggis, a pudding! The haggis is a wild animal that frequents lonely places in the Highlands. It is ferocious to an extreme and to everything else, and it is a great fighter. But its flesh is so great a delicacy that it is much sought after. Time and again has the sturdy Highlander gone out in the dead of night to track the kingly haggis to his native lair. There is a bounty on haggis tails of twopence halfpenny. This is how the average Scot has become so wealthy. The Scot eats haggis for the same reason as the ancient savage drank the blood of his slain adversary from a skull, to imbue him with the courage of his noble foe. And I wish to imbue myself with the courage of the noble haggis. So luckily, while I was in Scotland, Bruce agreed to take me haggis hunting.
Well, you're in luck today, Max, right? Because we've come up to the hills here. This is the environment of the haggis. Now, if the haggis stood in the hill, it'd roll all the way down to the bottom there. So, evolution has blessed them with 2 long right legs and 2 short left legs so that they can run around about the hills and not fall over. You may not know this, but Scots breed dogs to hunt the haggis. The problem is, the dogs don't like the cloudy, kind of overcast weather. So, we're going to have to go for plan B today. Although I did have a haggis hunting dog ready to come. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to dig a hole, and what we're going to do is we're going to cover over the hole. But first, I've got a can of worms, and we put that in the hole. We cover over the hole, so when the haggis come snuffling out of the heather looking for worms, because they like to eat the worms, tasty, 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 they smell the worms, they fall down the hole, and we'll have trapped the haggis.
But the worms will just burrow into the ground.
I'll go and get the dog.
Yeah, probably best. So yeah, that ended up being a bust, and I kind of started to think that the wild haggis was actually something that the Scots just told tourists to sell t-shirts. But that's okay, because, wild or not, there was a haggis waiting for me back at the butcher shop. And after 45 minutes of boiling, Ewan took them out of the pot and laid them before me, though even then he said that you had to be quite careful with them because they were delicate and the skins could quite easily burst. But he is a pro, and they didn't, and so he was able to slice one open for us to taste.
There you go, and you're seeing your herbs and your bits and pieces in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's nice, really smell the herbs off of that actually. Yeah. It's not the worst thing I've had.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. You actually taste the herbs afterwards. You're getting the aftertaste of the herb.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, there's no flavor. But then it starts to come across.
Comes to get you afterwards.
Kind of the opposite of spice, which usually hits you right away.
Yeah, no.
It's the texture that I actually really like.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the oatmeal.
But the oatmeal
Kind of breaks it up in a way.
Yeah. It kind of binds it together, but it just breaks up a wee bit as well.
Yeah,
so
like it's not mush. It's
No.
really nice texture. And that oatmeal, actually, you bite into it and it kind of pops almost.
Yeah. So that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the mint.
Yeah, you really taste that coming through.
I'm gonna say, I don't know what hyssop or savory tastes like, but I'm sure they're in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Just not sure, but it's the mint that's coming through strongest.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very good.
I'll go with that. It's a winner.
Thank you so much, Ewan.
No problem at all. Glad you enjoyed it.
So that was medieval haggis. Definitely different from the modern version. The modern version is also usually served now with neeps and tatties, tatties being potato and neeps being Swedish turnips, better known as rutabaga. And there's also usually now a creamy whiskey sauce to pour over the haggis, and anything with a creamy whiskey sauce is an A+ in my book. So thank you again to Ewan Patterson of Alan's Butcher for helping me make this dream come true. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you to Bruce Fumi from Scotland History Tours for helping me put everything together and for appearing in my video. And you should go check out his wonderful channel for more Scottish history, including some fascinating history about the kilt that you may not know. I'll actually make that video pop up somewhere down here, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.